Andalucía es mi tierra, yo soy del sur. Y tiene que comprender, que mis costumbres son esas y no las quiero perder.
Buenos días, buenas tardes, señores. Hi, how are you guys? Hi, hello. Fun fact of the day, I'm Spanish. Did you know? How could you tell, Jen? I'm actually curious. As a Spaniard, I'm very aware of the fact that if I asked you to create a list of 5 words that you associated with Spain, it would look something like this: flamenco, paella, inquisition, colonization, tapas, something like that. None of those words are communism. And when we do mention communism in Spain, we are usually referring to the Spanish Civil War, which happened a while ago. It is not really an example of communism, communist, or communist movements in Spain today. But what if I told you that, to my surprise, there has been a completely communist-led town in Spain since the late 70s? For almost 5 decades, a town in Andalucía, a little 2 hours away from where I lived in Cádiz, has been a thriving communist community led by a mayor nicknamed Spain's Robinhood. Camaradas. Let me tell you about Marinaleda.
Muy buenas tardes de televisión Marinaleda.
Marinaleda is a small town in La Campana in the province of Sevilla, or as the Yankees call it, Seville, 1 hour away from the province's capital, which bears the same name as the province, which is a common trend in Spanish provinces. For example, my province is Cádiz, and our capital city is Cádiz. Although Marinaleda is usually referred to as a communist utopia by literally every article ever written about it, utopic is not the word that fits it. Utopia refers to a perfect imaginary world or community, but Marinaleda isn't imaginary, it's real. And it's not perfect, it's scientific.
Intentamos no ser un paraíso, sino ser una realidad donde se pueda vivir con dignidad.
That's the reason why this mini socialist project has worked for over 40 years, while constantly being bashed by the pro-monarchy anti-communist media in Spain for enduring the same economic crises caused by the capitalist class's greed worldwide that hit everyone in the country as well. So how did this socialist mini project come to be? How does it work? What can we learn from it? And who is the Spanish Robin Hood? The town of Marinaleda itself has existed for 5,000 years prior to it becoming a communist success story. But let's focus on the period in La Historia Marinaleña that radicalized its masses, the Civil War and post-Civil War period. At the beginning of the Spanish Civil War, the town of Marinaleda was run by a Republican mayor, part of the Popular Front, Vicente Cejas Moreno, a leftist who supported the Spanish Republic, and not Franco's monarchist, Nazi and Mussolini-aided fascist coup. He was, by popular account, very much liked by the people of Marinaleda. They voted him in by overwhelming majority in the town's last election before the start of the war in 1936. Unfortunately, the nationalist coup d'etat happened that very year, and Marinaleda was one of the first towns that the nationalist army violently took control of during the very start of the Civil War. As soon as they took the small town, they assassinated Cejas Moreno, along with his son and 30 other Republican-affiliated Marinaleños who resisted them. As the fascist troops did during the Civil War in the towns that they took over, they constantly terrorized its citizens and disappeared those who rebelled. When the nationalists won the war against the disunited anarchists, communists, and Republicans of the Popular Front, and Franco declared himself the Caudillo of Spain, the working class of Marinaleda, of course, suffered. While the Duke of Infantado, like all greedy aristocrats, was taking private ownership of large portions of Marinaleda's fertile land for himself, working-class Marinaleños lived in extreme poverty, starvation, and repression under the administration of various Francoist mayors placed by the fascist police state's government, most of which were not even from Marinaleda. Not that people could have chosen someone better and more familiar to them, because democratic elections were outlawed in Franco's Spain. At some point, the starvation caused by poverty forced the majority of the population of Marinaleda to survive by only eating acorns and olives. Franco finally died in 1975 and passed down the power to the very same right-wing monarchy that his army violently occupied and repressed towns all over Spain, like Marinaleda, to re-establish. The King of Spain at that time, Juan Carlos II, reformed Spain from a fascist dictatorship to a constitutional monarchy that allowed for quote-unquote representative democracy and freedom of expression.
Yeah, I say quote unquote because as a communist Spaniard, I have to laugh. Why? Because while the majority of the people in Spain don't support the existence of the Spanish monarchy, the majority of the Cortes General do, despite the current majority of the members of the Cortes being part of the so-called Spanish Workers' Party. This, of course, includes Spain's prime minister, a monarchist neoliberal wolf in sheep's clothing, Pedro Sanchez. Not very representative of this so-called democracy. Also, freedom of expression for who? Because, I'm sorry, Pablo Hasél was thrown in jail and is in jail today for saying that the king killed his brother and for quote-unquote praising ETA. And a neo-Nazi, Isabel Medina Peralta, who accused Jews of ruining Spain with communism and implied that Spaniards must defend Spain from them by killing them, is not in jail. And neither is the neo-Nazi who bombed a Podemos meet this April. As of the 7th of last month, this man is walking free as long as he stays 500 meters away from any Podemos events from here on out. Just to be clear, a Nazi terrorist who actually committed a terror attack against a democratic socialist party with the intention to kill its members is free. And the neo-Nazi that called for Spaniards to kill all Jewish citizens of Spain didn't even get kicked out of her university, even after 3 different Jewish organizations in Spain demanded that she was. She is still extremely active online and is radicalizing reactionary Spaniards on her platform each day. But Pablo Hasél is still in jail since December of last year, I believe, for accusing the king of killing his brother and covering it up as a hunting accident in a rap lyric, which I'm not saying is true. It doesn't even have to be true. It's just not grounds for arrest. People in Spain say this all the time. It's literally like saying Diana was killed by the queen. That's what it is. It's someone getting arrested for saying that the queen killed Diana. And for speaking positively about ETA's past in a rap song too. Again, considering how many right-wing Spaniards talk positively about Franco, this is not grounds for arrest and imprisonment. Sorry, I got really close to the mic on that one. I'm just, But this is a far cry from actually committing a terrorist attack and actually calling for the genocide of Jewish people and accusing them of running Spain. Just wow, just what a shining example of democracy and freedom of expression.
Rant is over. Point is, after Franco's death, people were allowed to hold elections for the very first time in over 30 years. And after 30 years of repression, poverty, and misery, guess who the people of Marinaleda voted in? Communists. Yes, communists, obviously. Their experience under a murderous, anti-communist, fascist dictatorship made them realize that this isn't the world they want to live in. And they wanted to build a better one for the working class, starting with their own little town.
El Sindicato de Obreros del Campo, or the Union of Farm Workers, was founded in Marinaleda in 1977, 2 years after the constitutional monarchy replaced a dictatorship, followed by the establishment of El Colectivo de Unidad de los Trabajadores, or the Workers' Unity Collective Party, in 1979, which won 9 out of the 11 seats in the local government, the same year that the people of Marinaleda first elected the then unknown and now internationally recognized and legendary mayor Juan Manuel Sánchez Gordillo.
Y entonces se empezó a organizar el sindicato. Yo me fui simpatizando con el sindicato. Yo era muy joven, era jovencito. 18 años, 17, una cosa así. Y me empezó a simpatizarme y yo ya me incorporé también. Me incorporé y empecé a luchar como muchísima gente, claro. Había mucho paro, estábamos recién salidos de la dictadura, había mucho paro, no había vivienda, no teníamos vivienda, no teníamos trabajo, no teníamos bienestares, no había nada, no había campo de fútbol, no había piscina, no había... Y empezamos a luchar desde el ayuntamiento por esas cosas.
The immediate goal of the Union of Farm Workers and the Workers' Unity Collective, led by Sanchez Gordillo, was to restore the revolutionary and republican nature of the town pre-fascist dictatorship, changing the streets named after right-wing Spanish soldiers and renaming them after left-wing heroes, for example, Che Guevara and Salvador Allende. And, most importantly, improve the quality of life of the people of their town by providing everyone with employment, affordable housing, and a greater say in government. However, to do the latter, they needed to acquire land.
Por la tierra. Empezamos a una serie de reuniones, que teníamos que ocupar una finca para tener trabajo para el futuro.
The Marinaleños, led by Sanchez Gordillo, began occupying privately owned and completely unused land surrounding the town in the 1980s. The land itself, as described by Andalucía.com, I only use the best sources, como puedes ver, included a 1,200-hectare farmhouse owned but completely abandoned and unused by the family of the Duque of Infantado. Their slogan read, "Land for those who work on it," and they occupied and fought for this land for 12 years, breaking into and shutting down the Málaga and Sevilla airports, and blocking important roads in Sevilla to get the attention of the government, getting violently arrested and evicted by the police numerous times because, as we know, police are defenders of private property.
Claro, eso nos costó bastante esfuerzo. De ir a Sevilla, de ir en busca del presidente del gobierno que entonces en aquellos tiempos era Felipe González, en busca del rey incluso cuando venía a Sevilla, de ir, bueno, y claro, la policía en lo harto y todo lo que conlleva eso. Empezamos a ir a la tierra, íbamos andando, de aquí a la tierra hay 9 kilómetros. Un día andando, otro día andando, otro día andando, otro día andando. Y nos volvían para atrás, la Guardia Civil. El día que nos volvíamos a dormir, dormíamos allí en los olivos, unos olivos que había, sí. Olivos, allí en el suelo, nos quedábamos por la noche y estábamos allí, sin venirnos. Cuando nos veníamos era porque nos echaba la policía, la Guardia Civil. A la lucha iban mujeres mayores, iban niños. Forzábamos la cuerda, incluso, una vez que otra sí hemos llevado más de un palo, hemos enfrentado un poco a la guardia, nos echábamos, teníamos que venir, para atrás andando, sí. Al otro día, otra vez.
Nada ha sido fácil, pero yo creo que ahora estamos recogiendo los frutos de toda la lucha, de tener que dejar a nuestros niños cuando nos íbamos a luchar, de tener que dejar a nuestras personas mayores, de tener que montarte 1000 veces en los autobuses, de que a veces la policía te ha pegado palos.
Throughout all this, their mayor, Sanchez Gordillo, was at his people's side, always being a part of the action and always at the front line with his constituents and getting arrested alongside the people he was elected to serve.
¿Y el líder del todo fue Sanchez Gordillo?
Sí, Sanchez Gordillo, el líder fue Sanchez Gordillo, con otra gente, con gente más que estaban con él y es lo que lo organizaban.
Finally, after 12 years of struggle, the people of Marinaleda won the battle and they were given the land they occupied and fought for, including the Duque of Infantado's El Humoso. This victory put Marinaleda on the map and guaranteed its place in Spanish leftist history. From that very moment to this very day, the Marinaleños began to use El Humoso for their farming cooperative. Sanchez Gordillo's plan, which was the goal of his constituents, was to use the land to create enough jobs so that the people of his town would have enough to eat and support their families. So he, along with the members of the Union of Farm Workers and the Workers' Unity Collective Party, selected crops that would quote-unquote need maximum human labor in order to create as much work as possible for more workers. These crops include peppers, artichokes, beans, broccoli, and olives. Quite meaningfully, they ended up growing and harvesting some of the foods that they once had to steal from the rich landowners to survive during hard times. The people of Marinaleda also built their first processing factory that same year in order to can and jar what they produced. The Marinaleda Farming Cooperative became and has remained a shining example of the power of the people for all leftists. So now that you know their history, let's look at how the town of Marinaleda operates and what it looks like today to further understand why this communist-run town, dubbed Utopia, has captured the eye of the world. The Marinaleda Farming Cooperative does not distribute profits. Any surplus is reinvested to create more jobs. All of the cooperative workers earn the same salary, which is
47,75 6 horas y media de trabajo y no se reparten beneficios, sino que los beneficios que se obtienen en las cooperativas se reinvierten también para crear empleo.
As Al Jazeera pointed out in their article about Marinaleda, this amount of salary might seem low to you. However, this equates a monthly salary of about 1,200 euros, which is 150 euros more than the Spanish monthly minimum wage. Apart from the farming cooperative and the processing factory, there's also an oil cooperative. Here is what comrades from Marinaleda have to say about how their cooperatives work and what working as a cooperative worker is like.
Estamos nosotros aquí, aquí en esta cooperativa hay más de 200 socios. Y luego está la del humoso, que es otra diferente a nosotros. También molturan aceitunas, hacen el tema de alcachofa, pimiento, habas y demás, pero nosotros solo nos dedicamos al aceite de oliva.
Sí, claro.
Es una cooperativa, la forma, exactamente, la forma jurídica ahora sí es la misma, una sociedad cooperativa andaluza. Hay un presidente, hay un consejo rector que es un presidente, un vicepresidente, un secretario, unos vocales y unos interventores de cuentas. Eso lo elige una asamblea general de socios. Los socios se reúnen, exactamente, los 200 socios, y cada 4 años pues se eligen para los cargos al consejo rector. Y para 3 años los interventores de cuentas, que son los que un poco dirigen la cooperativa, y luego cada año pues hay un par de reuniones de Asamblea General donde explican a los socios lo que se ha hecho o lo que se quiere hacer. Entonces, cada vez que hay que hacer una inversión importante o algo, pues se somete a votación. Pues se presenta, necesitamos por ejemplo comprar esta máquina que se compró, pues se presenta a votación y si lo acuerdan los socios se compra.
El trabajo se reparte en asamblea, no hay que ir a mendigarle trabajo a ningún patrón, con lo cual dignifica al trabajador.
El beneficio es colectivo, aquí hay 40 personas que son cooperativistas que trabajan durante todo el año y luego la gente eventuales que venimos en cosecha, nos vamos turnando según la cantidad de cultivo que haya que hacer o de mano de obra que haya que dar.
Marinaleda's cooperatives receive widespread support from people across all political spectrums.
Öl hier seit ein paar Jahren aus Unterstützungsgründen sozusagen, weil das ist eine Kooperative. Das Öl ist nicht gerade billig und wir müssen 100 Kilometer weit weg fahren und zurück. Also es wird ein bisschen teurer als sonst, aber wir mögen lieber dieses Öl zu kaufen als das Öl in einem Supermarkt. Aus politischen Gründen finde ich super. Und ich finde klasse, dass mein Vater, der gar kein Linke ist, auch in der gleichen Meinung ist. Mein Vater, wie gesagt, also der ist ja konservativer, aber also der hat eine gute Meinung von den Bürgermeister hier, von den Leuten, so wie das Dorf hier organisiert wird. Und ich finde es schon merkwürdig, dass mein Vater so denkt, obwohl er aus der anderen politischen Seite ist. So.
This isn't to say that those are the only jobs available in the town if you want to live there. In fact, private enterprise in the form of small businesses like kioscos and such are permitted in the town as a quote-unquote accepted part of life in a capitalist country. And those private businesses and their products such as candy, fruit, clothing, etc. are bought and supported by most of Marinaleda and of course by tourists who come and visit the little revolutionary town. People also work in the health and education sectors, like the mayor himself, who is a high school history teacher.
Due to the fact that communist Marinaleda is a town located in a constitutional monarchy and therefore still subject to Spanish electoral law, their relationship with the Spanish state is very complicated. Sanchez Gordillo, who lives amongst and works amongst his townspeople as their kids' history teacher and has represented them since the very beginning, is unsurprisingly re-elected by a huge majority of the population of Marinaleda every election, which is not necessarily illegal or legal, according to Spanish law. Also, by law, there should be up to 7 police stationed in Marinaleda in accordance to the number of inhabitants of the town. But Marinaleda instead chose to abolish their local police force. Yes, this communist town has done what many community organizers in the United States strive to eventually achieve: abolish the police, and instead rely on building a strong, close-knit community that protects themselves and each other. And it has worked out pretty well. Marinaleda also reportedly saves 350,000 euros every year for not having local police, which is more money that they can invest in the well-being of their whole town.
Want to hear the undeniable victory of this socialist mini-project? While the unemployment rate in Spain remains the second highest in the EU at 15.67%, and the autonomous community of Andalucía and Spain's unemployment specifically is at a shocking 23%, the rate of unemployment in the town of Marinaleda, thanks to its ever-available and practically guaranteed employment, is at 5%. 95% of adult marinaleños are employed.
Industria agroalimentaria. Con la tierra de quien la trabaja y la industria de quien la trabaja hemos conseguido prácticamente el pleno empleo. Si nosotros pensamos que el derecho al trabajo es un derecho reconocido por todas las constituciones de Europa, pues aquí lo estamos convirtiendo en realidad.
The 5% who are unemployed consist mostly of newcomers to the town from other parts of Spain and disabled adults, as well as refugees. As some of you may know, Spain is the country in the EU that accepts the most refugees. While Marinaleda itself hasn't taken in a vast majority of refugees, let's remember this is a tiny rural town that has about 3,000 people living within it. They have taken in the ones that they could, the ones that were able to and wanted to settle there. However, for refugees who don't speak Spanish yet and therefore would like some time to learn Spanish, adapt to a new culture, and feel comfortable and safe after living through hell, are able to do that much more easily in Marinaleda than other towns in the rest of Spain. Why? Because your family can survive while unemployed in Marinaleda. And you and anyone in Andalucía who is able to apply for the €400 a month job seekers allowance provided by the Andalusian government can survive in Marinaleda on that unemployment. The €15 monthly mortgage, yes, you heard that right, €15 monthly mortgage for a house in Marinaleda makes it easy for unemployed people to survive on the €400 job seekers monthly allowance. €15 a month.
La vivienda es un derecho. El joven que quiere una vivienda le damos el suelo gratuito, los albañiles gratuitos, el arquitecto, ellos ponen su trabajo y se hacen viviendas de 90 metros construidos, 100 metros de patio y pagan 15 euros al mes.
El sistema de construcción funciona de la siguiente manera. Tú solicitas la casa, el ayuntamiento le da unas casas, las solicita, y entonces el ayuntamiento te pone a ti un albañil, y te pone el material de construir la casa. Tú trabajas en tu casa. Y entonces cuando tú terminas la casa, lo que tú has trabajado, lo que equivale en dinero, te lo descuenta de la casa. Pues si la casa vale 4, por ejemplo, ponerte un ejemplo, si la casa vale 20.000 euros, ponerte un ejemplo, pues si tú has trabajado tantos meses y tu trabajo equivale a 2.000 euros, pues te descuentan los 2.000 euros. Y después te ponen lo que haya quedado, te lo ponen una cota. De lo que te lo dije ya, de lo que las constructores acuerden. Y lo puedan pagar buenamente. Y eso es unos 15 euros, una cosa así. Ya te he dicho, es un contrato, tú haces un contrato que la casa no puedes venderla. Pasa de padre a hijo y sucesivamente. No es un negocio la casa, no es un negocio. Aquí la idea de las casas es para que la persona viva, no para otra cosa. Para que la persona tenga un techo, no es para otra cosa. En España ahora mismo hay casi 1 millón de pisos vacíos y la gente está sin vivienda. Hay casi 1 millón de pisos de casa, entre casa y piso hay casi 1 millón. Los últimos datos que dieron. Y muchísima gente no tiene techo.
An additional €15 a month also provides people with a membership to Marinaleda Sports Center and a place in their local kindergarten for their children. The local government, by the way, provides 3 free school meals a day for them. What I like the most about this part of Marinaleda, apart from the fact that it is a wonderful place and safe haven for refugees to find a home, an affordable home, and find employment right off the bat, is that it's able to provide asylum for single stay-at-home mothers who run away from their abusive husbands with their young children and don't have time to be working and taking care of them.
Now, the victory of this is not that people are working or people don't need to work to survive. It's that it proves all those no work without profit incentive, and if you give people the opportunity to not work and survive, society will collapse right towards wrong. This is a town where people get the chance to choose to either work according to their ability and needs without the incentive of profit, or not work at all and live very comfortably. And it has the lowest unemployment rate in all of Andalucía, which is notorious for having high unemployment rates.
This town's greatest strength is how they've built community amongst themselves and have a culture of collective work and cooperation. For example, to keep the town looking fresh and beautiful, every few weeks the town hall declares a Red Sunday, in which volunteers clean the streets and do odd jobs around the town. And again, this doesn't exclude its mayor or any of the other elected officials of the local government. They have to do their part or be held accountable by the people by losing their next election.
The local government makes all the decisions concerning the town and the town's parties' political positions together by vote after town hall hearings, giving a microphone to everyone to voice their opinions. Here's some footage of how that governance works.
La directa debe ser la democracia y que la gente tiene que decidir no una vez cada 4 años, que eligen unos representantes que luego nunca más se acercan al pueblo, sino que lo que hace falta es que la gente decida todos los días. Y hay mecanismos a través de internet o mediante referéndum vinculantes para que los pueblos decidan. Por ejemplo, ante la crisis, ¿por qué no se pregunta si la gente quiere o no quiere los recortes? Y que la gente decida. Lo han intentado en Grecia y lo único que se le ha ocurrido es quitar a un presidente electo por mayoría absoluta y poner a un señor representante del Fondo Monetario Internacional. Por tanto, a mí me parece que lo que se hace en Marinaleda se puede hacer también en otras partes. ¿Por qué no se pueden discutir los presupuestos con la gente? ¿Por qué los presupuestos públicos tienen que ser secretos o solamente de los especialistas de la política? ¿Por qué los presupuestos, ya sean de un ayuntamiento o de una diputación o de un gobierno, no se puede llevar a que la gente sepa en qué se gastan los dineros y decidan los servicios básicos como los quieren? Yo creo que lo que hace falta es voluntad política.
No queremos pacto con el gobierno porque sería tanto como la muerte de Izquierda Unida. No queremos pacto de gobierno porque no podemos bendecir los recortes que vienen. Y no queremos pacto de gobierno porque no queremos pactar con un gobierno corrupto y con un gobierno que tiene establecido un régimen y que ha sido incapaz de resolver los problemas que Andalucía tiene. Y por eso no queremos pacto de gobierno. Entonces, yo voy a preguntar, me vamos a levantar el brazo, las personas que quieran y no quieran pacto, ahora mismo es una encuesta, posiblemente si el pacto se da, habrá un referéndum que ya habrá que votar y todas esas cosas. Ahora solamente es la opinión, y la opinión, yo creo que me levanté los brazos, nosotros del sindicato hemos dicho que no queremos pacto de ninguna clase con el PSOE, ni con el PP, claro, ni con uno ni con otro, ni con gato blanco, ni con gato negro. Entonces, las personas que crean que Izquierda Unida no tiene que pactar ni con el PP, ni con el PSOE, lo que crean que eso es lo que tenemos que hacer, levanten el brazo, por favor.
Marinaleda, to me, as a communist Andaluza, ole, is an example of what I want all of Andalucía to look. Collectivized, employed, housed, socially progressive, mobilized against injustice, tolerant, without losing the character and the beauty of being Andalusian. Marinaleda still has their own Semana Santa.
Más despacio, más despacio, más despacito, más despacito. Vale, vamos al hombro, poquito a poco, despacito. Cada uno a su sitio.
The majority of people in Marinaleda probably grew up Catholic if they're not Catholic. But they still elect a pro-queer, pro-abortion, anti-racist communist from Izquierda Unida into local office by overwhelming majority every single election. And the only two people in office right now in Marinaleda who are not part of that political party are literally part of PSOE, which, by the way, I don't like PSOE. I have various reasons. They all have to do with neoliberalism, revisionism, democratic socialist activity. Listen to the song by Pablo Hasél if you want to know how I feel about them and Podemos. Marinaleda has their own Feria de Primavera como Dios quiso, and they still dance las sevillanas because son de Sevilla. They still have their color especial. They have not given up their culture. They haven't given up our food. They are authentically Andaluces and authentically communist. And no one represents that or embodies that more than their mayor, Juan Manuel Sánchez Gordillo, who is literally a Spanish uncle. He has the energy of your tío. He is your tío. Tito Juan Manuel. Tito Juanma.
El sistema que por eso paga la migración, corrupción, que es el sistema capitalista de producción. Por eso me declaro insumiso ante la dictadura del mercado, sus recetas y sus mandatos. Me comprometo también a luchar con toda mi fuerza por esta nación sin soberanía que es Andalucía. Me comprometo también a dar voz a los que no tienen voz en este Parlamento y en la calle. ¡Viva Andalucía libre!
Everyone from communists to the alt-right have their opinions on Juan Manuel Sánchez Gordillo. So I'm going to follow suit and explain my view of who he is and what he represents to me.
Before I start this part, I'm sure you who have watched this entire video have noticed my insistence on emphasizing the role of all revolutionary Marinaleños in the building of their quote-unquote utopia, which honestly I'm not thrilled that these communists have embraced as a descriptor of their town, because communism is anything but utopic. It's scientific in nature, and calling it utopic makes it more easy for Spanish anti-communists to call it a failed utopia when small and conflict arises in town.
Paraíso no es. Aquí tenemos también nuestras dificultades y por ser quien somos nos dan mucha caña.
The amount of articles I've found clearly written by Spanish right-wingers, which basically say it seems like the utopia is proving that communism is a fantasy because they are working through a problem as a community instead of being perfect utopians, is way too high, but whatever. They insist on calling themselves a utopia anyways. And also my insistence on mentioning that the mayor Sánchez Gordillo and all other political leaders of Marinaleda live amongst the people with virtually zero privileges and the same expectations to contribute to their community with their labor.
No tiene ningún privilegio, ni el resto de concejales por ser concejales se tiene ningún privilegio.
The reason being is it bothers me that we spend so much time talking about Juan Manuel Sánchez Gordillo as an individual when we talk about Marinaleda, when we should be focusing on the people of Marinaleda's collective power, being the actual force that made this mini socialist project so successful. It's the people that voted him in. He's not the sole reason Marinaleda is thriving. He is not the sole decision maker, as we saw in the town hall. So while I'm gonna go ahead and talk about his importance now, don't interpret this as me saying he's the reason Marinaleda is amazing. But there's a reason his people keep electing him every election cycle for the past 40 years, and why he's considered remarkable.
Como si fuera un insulto. Yo estoy por el bien común.
Juan Manuel Sánchez Gordillo, Andalucian independista, leader of the Unitary Candidacy of Workers' Party, and libertarian, aka anarcho-communist, was a man born during Franco's dictatorship in a town stricken by rural poverty, his home located on a street named after a fascist whose buddies murdered his town's mayor. He grew up watching police forces beat and imprison any leftist and dissenter they saw in his town. The conditions he was born in radicalized him, and when the constitutional monarchy came came about after Franco's death, he joined the Union of Farm Workers and ran for office in the Workers' Unity Collective Party with the goal to improve the lives of his fellow townspeople. His exceptional passion and determination to help Marinaleda elected him as mayor the first time, and his ability to deliver and represent his town's wishes, his bravery against the Spanish state, and his love for his people is what has kept his people voting for him, again by overwhelming majority, for 40 years. Anyone who claims that this 69-year-old high school teacher and farming enthusiast is somehow an authoritarian dictator who lives off the backs of 2,600 of his comrades is an actual idiot, but what do I expect from members of El PP? I mean, seriously, how much does Alfonso Alonso think high school teachers make in Spain? Is he that disconnected from reality? Our bestie Tito Juanma lives in the same houses and earns the same salary as everyone in his town. He lives and struggles with his people. He has not become rich due to his fame.
Hombre, Juan Manuel es un mal ejemplo para los políticos que se quieren enriquecer de la política.
No se le puede mirar a la gente a los ojos si uno vive igual que vive la gente.
He has survived 2 assassination attempts by far right-wingers because of it, though. Yeah, you heard that right. His life is currently at risk for existing as a communist mayor. But he still wakes up every day and chooses to be loud and outspoken on behalf of his people and the entire working class in Spain and all over the world. First with the hunger strike against hunger in 1980, then with the occupation of El Humoso, which was a struggle of 12 years, and after that victory, the Robinhood raids of 2012. These so-called Robinhood raids is the reason why he is dubbed Spain's Robin Hood. Here's the context. So in 2012, Andalucía was suffering because of the world economic crisis. People were losing their jobs and homes, and they couldn't pay for rent. Many of the most vulnerable Andalusians couldn't even buy groceries and were going to bed hungry at night. And the Andalusian government was doing basically nothing to help them. So Sánchez Gordillo and other members of Izquierda Unida and the Workers' Unity Collective decided that they would both cause some commotion so that the government could take their demands seriously, and they would provide food and necessities for the working class since the government wouldn't.
They occupied military land, they seized an aristocrat's palace, and they went on a 3-week march across Andalucía and called upon the mayors of all towns in Andalucía to not repay their debts to the government until they provided the working class that were jobless and unhoused with jobs and housing. And what they do to provide food to the people, they and the union SOCCAT, SOCSAT, led a series of expropriations from supermarkets.
I quote Andalucía.com again simply because they actually have a very good article about Marinaleda that's surprisingly very informative and nuanced. In a spectacular publicity coup that made news around the world, they filled shopping carts with bread, rice, olive oil, esencial para la vida, and other basic supplies and donated them to food banks for Andalusians in dire economic straits. Right-wingers like to criticize Sánchez Gordillo by saying he wasn't even actually taking the food from the supermarket himself, he was waiting in the car. I suggest these right-wingers look up the meaning of a getaway car and watch some heist movies for examples. Also, while he did not get arrested for this raid that he planned and led, and some of his comrades who also planned it did because they were the ones getting the food, he offered to get arrested for these raids and even said that he had expected and hoped to get arrested so that he could express his message more clearly. Not to mention that Sánchez Gordillo has been arrested 7 times throughout his tenure as mayor while protesting with his people, whom he doesn't see as anything but his comrades.
By the way, he didn't protest the economic crisis because his town was experiencing it. During 2012, when Andalucía as a whole had an average of 36% unemployment rate, the one in Marinaleda, which is usually 5%, did not rise above 5.5. Save for a couple internal immigrants from other parts of Spain who had lost their jobs and needed somewhere to stay, where the mortgage was 15 euros a month. He was literally fighting for everyone else.
While, of course, due to him and his town and I's different communist ideologies, which his and the rest of his parties being described as libertarian communist and anarcho-communist, and I being a Marxist-Leninist Maoist, I would not say he is my favorite leader in the entire world and that I agree with everything that he says and he believes. But to me, as an Andalusian communist, he is significant. I don't know about that many Andalusian communists apart from Lorca. I grew up most of my life in Andalucía not knowing that there was an extremely successful socialist rural town similar to the towns 10 minutes away from the port city I lived in. And I grew up
very aware of the dire economic conditions in my autonomous community. So this example of socialism with distinctly Andalusian characteristics gives me hope that other towns around Andalucía that I know and love, including my own, could prosper under the same or similar system than the one in Marinaleda. So frankly, I don't care what type of communism it is. It's obviously working for this little town. And while the ideology of Marxist-Leninism Maoism is an ideology that can be applied everywhere around the world, including Spain, and it, unlike libertarian communism or anarcho-communism, also has the ability to liberate the masses in semi-feudal and semi-colonial countries from bureaucrat capitalism, imperialism, and feudalism like in the Philippines, which I am also from, and that's why I'm part of Anak Bayan, I cannot say that this form of anarcho-communism isn't successful in Andalucía because it's clearly working pretty well in this specific part of the world and can and has thrived in others with similar material conditions. Not to mention that Spain does have a very rich history of anarcho-communism, which is the reason why Marinaleda is anarcho-communist. And that shouldn't be looked down upon by communists who don't agree with that specific ideology. It should actually be instead celebrated. I also have a lot of respect for Juan Manuel Sánchez Gordillo because despite him and his party being anarcho-communist, he shows a lot of international solidarity with socialist movements around the world. He supports Cuba's revolution and the Bolivarian revolution. He always wears a keffiyeh around his neck. He's not a no-state solution cringe anarchity. He believes and supports Palestinian liberation. He is also very passionately anti-imperialist, and most importantly, his fellow comrades in Marinaleda love him like he loves them and approves of his leadership.
Si no fuera así por él y por el pueblo, lo que tenemos hoy día aquí en Marinaleda no lo tendríamos, vaya que no lo tendríamos.
Yo no cambiaría Marinaleda por nada. Yo creo que el que se va porque no lo piensa bien.
So what did we learn about Marinaleda? Firstly, we learned that trying to survive as an anti-capitalist Republican town in a capitalist country with a constitutional monarchy is extremely hard and will put you under unimaginable scrutiny. But nevertheless, through passion, organization, and endurance, despite getting arrested and beaten and tear gassed by Spanish police and their elected mayor being victim of 2 failed assassination attempts, this rural town has not only survived, but actually thrived, providing jobs and guaranteed housing to its citizens in an autonomous Spanish community with notoriously high unemployment rates and rising numbers of unhoused people. Secondly, because of their mini-socialist experiment, we know that Marinaleda's model of production and governments can be applied successfully to rural towns in Andalucía, any other rural parts of Spain, and of course outside of Spain, across the map as long as they have roughly the same material conditions. Thirdly, we learned once again that socialism in every country looks different, and it must be different to be successful, and our differences as socialist communities around the world shouldn't impede us from showing solidarity towards our comrades across the globe.